Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we've seen some news from Games Workshop that affects Warhammer Old World. Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's regarding a model refresh for Age of Sigmar. Like me, it's possible you won't have seen this because personally I don't really read the Age of Sigmar updates particularly regularly, but it has been flagged that this one contains some old world information. So what's going on? Put simply, Games Workshop are releasing a load of new stuff for the Cities of Sigmar faction in Age of Sigmar, which means that it's going to have a bit of a range refresh because it's becoming quite an extensive catalogue of figures. And that means a number of ranges are going to be moved into retirement. However, all is not lost because they have said that many of the models being removed now will be re-released to support Warhammer Old World for use in the Empire, High Elf and Wood Elf forces. The article does go on to say that many of these models will be re-released, so I think that's an important distinction to make. It does mean that we might see some of these models being permanently retired, but at this point we can't say which ones they are. So this brings us on to the meat of the article. What models are being affected? Well, fairly high up in the article, towards the top, Games Workshop do say that the Steam Tank, Celestial, Hurricanum and Imperial Griffin are going to remain Age of Sigmar models. Now, whether that means they'll be pushed as an old world thing as well, I would imagine certainly the Steam Tank probably would, because I think that was invented by the time the old world is set, and in fact there were probably more of them at that point than there were towards the end times. Celestial Herculean, I'm not sure. Imperial Griffin, again, you'd expect it to be an option, and they've said that the 8th edition armies will all be playable, so again I'd expect rules for these when Old World turns up and we start getting our army books. But let's now turn to the models which are going into retirement. Some of it may be temporary, shall we say. So what have we got? Well, for the Empire, we've got the General on Foot, crossbow / handgunner kit, the so-called Free Guild Guard, which is the kit for the old state troopers, so spearmen, swordsmen, halberdiers, the Hellblaster, the Pistolier / Outrider kit, great swords, and the Demigryphs. Looking at the list of kits there, it's pretty much the fundamentals of an Empire army. The only thing perhaps that's missing are some knights. Now, I don't think the Empire Knight box set has aged particularly well. I think it could be made a lot more interesting. So maybe that's an indication where we might see new models coming into the range rather than just a rehash of the old ones. Looking back at the history of the models for Imperial Knights, the old Metal Knights Panther, for example, I think were a lot more interesting than the current Knights. So we can but watch this space. Turning to the High Elves next, there's 3 kits mentioned. There is the Phoenix kit, the Phoenix Guard, and Shadow Warriors. I personally would expect to see certainly Phoenix Guard coming back. They're such an iconic unit for the High Elves, and they're still pretty good models, I think. So it'd be interesting to see if all of those 3 kits come back, or if not, what Games Workshop decides to cut. And that then leaves us with the Wood Elves, which also only has a few kits listed, which are the Eternal Guard, the Wild Riders, and there's a Prince character kit. Again, I think you've got some kits in there which will definitely be useful for anyone that's collecting a Warhammer Old World army. Be interesting to see the direction of travel with Wood Elves as they go in as well, as to what the direction of travel for that army looks like, again, when army books, indexes, or whatever they go with are released. The final point of interest in this article is there's a comment that in July we will see a developer diary. Now we're already nearly halfway through July, so there's not a lot of time left for this. In the non-40k preview, Games Workshop merely said information will be coming later in the year, which, given that they promised us a June developer diary and then didn't deliver on that, did make me think that the developer diaries perhaps were going to go from monthly to being kicked down the road a little bit, and that we wouldn't see any information for a good couple of months. So if it's true that we do get this July edition and they do stick to that time scale, then hopefully that gives us an indication that the game's on track and we'll start to see some more meaningful information, particularly after the disappointment that was out there with the Horus Heresy Epic game being previewed, announced and released well within the time frame that they've been trundling through talking about Warhammer Old World. So yeah, hopefully the July developer diary gives us more than a couple of models and a map, but we can but see. So that's it from the news perspective for today. Usual Friday service will continue on the 14th of July. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Return to the Old World. Have a great day.